This is your Thursday Daily Delivery Podcast. I am Michael Rand. How are you guys doing out there today? It's been a good full week on the show. Working ahead a little bit, too. Got a lot of good stuff coming up for you next week as well. Stuff that I've recorded already. And, things are getting a little bit busier. It is the first day of September. Feels a little bit sad to say that because that always means that we're getting close to the end of the summer. But that also means we've got a lot to talk about as the months go on. I'll have Lindsay Whalen on the show next week. I'll have Michael Grady, Timberwolves' new play-by-play voice, on sometime probably next week as well. So a lot of stuff percolating on the show, and today is no exception to that. Got to talk Vikings again. They made another trade. Kwesi Adofo-Mensah, trader Kwesi. He's already made, I believe, this is 4 trades like in the last week or so. If we count the Nick Mullins deal, we count the they traded Jesse Davis and got a little draft capital back there. They traded for the defensive lineman the other day, and now they trade for Jalen Reagor, wide receiver from the Eagles. First round pick in 2020, taking 1 pick before Justin Jefferson. That's a whoops by the Eagles. We'll get into that here in a little bit, and just the corrections they are trying to make to some of what has happened in the past, that being the Vikings. Got to talk about Minnesota United, disappointing game out in Salt Lake City, losing 3-0 to Real Salt Lake. Had a chance to really kind of create some distance in the Western Conference, but shorthanded in that game. Trying not to push things too hard in that game. Emmanuel Reynoso did not play in that match, so maybe one that they were resigned to, maybe giving up a little bit there. But 3-0, not a good result for them, even without a full squad. So we'll talk a little bit more about that here in a bit. But first, what did I miss? Disappointing end to the Twins game on Wednesday night. Couple facets to that. First, they fall behind 5-1 in the middle innings against Boston. Grand slam by Xander Bogaerts off of Joe Ryan, kind of the big hit that got that thing a little bit out of control. But they start chipping away. And then in the 8th, they get it there. They're down 6-3. They get a little bit of 2-out rally going. Then Nick Gordon hits long fly ball to right and stands at home plate for a little while and admires it, wondering, is that going to be a home run? Is it not? Ends up hitting high off the wall. So 2 runs do score, gets it to 6-5, but Nick Gordon, who is not going very fast out of the box, probably lost a couple seconds at least looking at it and then not running full speed. The ball caroms deep back towards second base off of the high right field wall. He decides to try to go for third anyway. And as this play is developing, by the way, I'm thinking, is this an inside the park home run? Nick Gordon is fast. That ball was high. It was a high hit, and how far it caromed. I'm like, is he going to get his home run anyway? Is he going to be able to circle the bases? But then I see the right fielder track the ball down and throw towards third, and I'm confused because I'm like, Nick Gordon should be on third at the very least. Gets thrown out at third base. A good throw. A worse throw, he probably makes it anyway, but a good throw, he's out. Makes the third out at third base in a game where they're down by a run in the 8th inning. That is a big-time no-no. So is watching that one go. You can't do that. Anytime you got to run hard out of the batter's box, even if you think it's a no-doubter, even if you're kind of admiring it or watching it, good hit. Obviously, a big hit, a big moment of the game. You'd rather have that than a ground out where you're still at 6-3, but that sort of play, that's a teachable moment. That's a learnable moment for Nick Gordon where you just cannot do that, especially in such an important situation. So fast forward to the 9th inning, that play still looming large because now it's first and second, nobody out for the Twins in the bottom of the 9th. They've gotten both Gilberto Celestino and Gary Sanchez on base. Turn the lineup over to the top. You got Luis Arraez, Carlos Correa. You're thinking, okay, they are in business here. They should at least be able to hopefully tie this game with the first 2 runners on in the inning. But Arraez has a poor at bat, misses a pitch, and then hits a pretty weak fly ball to left field. Can't advance the runners in any way. Then Correa grounds into a inning-ending, game-ending double play. And these things happen, right? These guys are human. It's not like they weren't trying. So this is not an effort thing in the ninth inning. It's just, sometimes the results don't follow the way you want them to, but you'd like to see Arraez and Correa put together better at-bats in that situation. Correa took the first pitch was center cut fastball. Would have loved to see him take a hack at that one instead of the second one, which got in on him a little bit, it looked like, and he couldn't do much with it. But that's life, right? You're not always going to have the results you want, but this one hurts from the standpoint that they had a chance to make up a game on Cleveland. Could have cut this to a half-game lead in the AL Central. Cleveland had lost to Baltimore. That game was in the books well before this one ended. A 4-0 Cleveland loss there. Now, Cleveland's got one more against Baltimore, then some more against the Mariners, so they've got some tough ones. But the Twins now go to Chicago. Chicago's got some good pitchers lined up against them. This is kind of the White Sox last gasp starting September here. Then they got to play 4 against the Yankees, and I know the Yankees have not been great since the All-Star break, but they seem to be figuring things out a little bit more now. And then 8 of the next 11 after that are against Cleveland for the Twins. So this is go time. This is where we're really gonna find out what this team has. And again, they were coming off a 5-game winning streak. They'd already beaten the Red Sox twice, and the Red Sox are not a bad team. Like winning 5 in a row against the Giants and Red Sox is a good sign. Those are all home games. Those were battles. Those were games that they had to, really fight. There were some really big key at bats in those moments from a lot of players. Carlos Correa being one of them. Jake Cave. Gio Urshela, a lot of guys had big hits in those moments, and you're not going to come through every time, but just from a result standpoint, that one was disappointing on Wednesday because they could have made up that game. Again, you don't know what's going to be what's going to be big or not at the end of the year, but that one felt like it could be significant, and one that could be looked at the end is like, we had that one right there, and it let it get away.
MGM Wine and Spirits is the choice for savings, service, and a great selection of spirits, pre-mixed cocktails, wines, and of course, ice-cold beers and hard seltzers. With over 30 locations throughout the Twin Cities and beyond, there's an MGM near you. Head to MGMWineandSpirits.com to find a convenient location in your area. Get social. Follow MGM on Facebook and Instagram for all the latest news and trends. Make great moments with MGM Wine and Spirits, your locally owned and operated choice for over 50 years. Save time, save money. Shop MGM.
Got Chip Scoggins right now on Daily Delivery. Chip, columnist for the Star Tribune, of course. I saw you out at the fair earlier this week talking to you and Patrick Royce about your new book. Congrats on that. I might actually play some of that conversation on an upcoming podcast as well. But Chip, I want to talk college football today, if that's all right with you. It usually is.
Absolutely. I'll never complain about that. And thank you for hosting that the Q&A with Pat at the fair. That was awesome.
Yeah, I hope to, like I said, play some of that for the podcast audience, maybe sometime next week. Got a lot of stuff. It's that time of year, Chip. Gophers open Thursday night. I would think they would hope there won't be a whole lot of a test from Jerry Kill's New Mexico State squad, although they were a little bit more competitive against Nevada maybe than I thought they would be, but that's not the same caliber of opponent.
No, there's a reason people think they're one of the worst college football programs in Division I because they are. Kill has a lot of work to do there because they're just deficiencies everywhere. And their starting quarterback, I think, threw 3 or 4 interceptions that opening night out, and they placed him with a freshman. I don't know. I haven't seen it. Kill said he'll make a quarterback switch or not. And they're playing, which is ludicrous on a short week, to play on a Saturday
5
night.
days, right? Yeah.
And then have to travel that far to play a Big Ten team on Thursday night. It was just, I know Mac Boston was the AD at schedule that years ago. It was probably not the best idea. So it'll be, a good opening, game for the Gophers to kind of work on some, get the kinks out, get the, shake off some of the, the rust or whatever you have those first games where it might be a little bit sloppy. But it shouldn't be a close game by any stretch.
What do you want to see in this game that would tell you either a concern of yours was being allayed, or that something you just want to know about this team that maybe we haven't, that you maybe just can't glean until you see them actually on the field?
Yeah, well, a couple things. They replaced so much in the trenches along both lines.
Yeah.
You're only returning one starting offensive lineman, who, albeit is a very good one, John Michael Schmidt's the All-American candidate at center. But otherwise, you got 4 new stars. It's not guys that haven't played, and they're not freshmen. They're experienced, but they haven't played together. And then defensive line, you lost 2 NFL draft picks at your rush ends, and so replace a lot of depth there. But in talking and listening to PJ Fleck and coaches, they like what they have there. So, but I want to see if the blueprint and what we've seen them win games the last few years by just beating teams up in the trenches, by being physical. Right. Is that component still there? And then the one big question to me will not be answered, I don't think, is that, are they going to be more balanced now on offense with Kirk Schrock coming back? I don't think we'll see that, because I think this is going to be a typical PJ Fleck non-conference game where they just run the ball, run it, get, milk the clock, whatever the score is, he's fine with that. Just get the win. But at some point, we need to see a more competent passing game. You need to see Dalen Wright be a consistent part of it. Brevin Spanford, the huge tight end, I want to see him be a component in it to go along with Chris Altman-Bell. And it can't just be an afterthought. You can't be one-handed. And so, I don't think we'll see a lot of passing in this game. I don't think that question is going to be answered. But to me, that is the number one question about this team is, are they going to show – it's never going to be 50-50 with PJ, but can you be more balanced to where your passing game is a reliable option?
Why wouldn't we see more passing in this game, though? I know they might not necessarily need to do it to win, but isn't this the time to work on stuff like that? I mean, that's something they didn't really do. That was going to be a frustration last season at a certain point too, where they maybe didn't work on that phase, didn't become multi-dimensional against opponents where you could maybe work on some of that stuff, and then you either wouldn't or couldn't do it later on in the season either. And if you're right, if they can't just beat up teams this year, if the offensive line is going to take a little time to gel, perhaps you probably are going to need to be more multifaceted than you were in the past.
Well, I would like to see it. I mean, I think, as you mentioned, this is kind of the ideal situation to work on things, to work on the passing game. But maybe PJ will throw us a curveball and kind of be out of character. But I've just seen enough of these preseason games with PJ to know, based on his history, I'm just going on how he's handled these things. Typically, it is run, milk the clock, be conservative, don't show your cards, don't show the Big Ten, what you have. But at some point, and I wrote this at the end of last year, it's like, Michael, the passing game is not a light switch.
No.
You can't just say when you need it, all right, we've ignored it all year and we've just kind of been sporadic when we throw it, but now we really need it, so we're going to flip the switch and be good at it. It doesn't work that way. You have to nurture it, and you have to build confidence and chemistry with your quarterbacks and wide receivers and pass blocking. And so this would be a good time to do it, but based on how PJ's handled, I'm skeptical that we're going to see a lot of passes.
It does feel like an important year. I mean, depending on whether we give them year 0 or not, this is either year 5 or 6, depending on how you're adding it. But this is the 6th season as head coach. And, at that point, you've got all of your players, essentially. This is your program. There's no mystery to how you want things to operate. And obviously, 2020 COVID, interrupts things, but also gave them the opportunity to have some of these, 6th year, the encore 4, as they're calling them, back for this. But it feels like, the conference is going to be there for the available again to possibly win that side of things. And, at a certain point, you gotta go that next step. And do they have the team to do that this year? Because I don't think it's going to get easier in the future.
Well, no, that's what I'm writing for my advanced column tomorrow, Mikey, is that this is year 6. This is not, we've heard him refer to it year 0. Tanner Morgan always called it the dig. Those early years where you're trying to implement your identity, your culture, all the things you want to be, to get the recruits in that you want, your systems. This is year 6. This is who you are. And PJ talks so much about sustainability, building that program like in Iowa or Wisconsin, that every year, sort of what you're going to have, and you're not going to have these ebbs and flows. You're going to have an identity. And I think we're starting to see that from his program. Not, they haven't won the West yet, so it's not complete, but I think kind of what you're going to get from that program now. I think you're going to see solid defense. They've kind of built an identity there with Joe Rossi. I think getting Kurt Shiraka back is a big upgrade at coordinator from what they had with Mike Sanford. And listen, you got a quarterback who's going to start his 40th game.
That's amazing.
Thursday night. Now, how often do you have a quarterback that has started 40 games going into the season, right? Not at the end of the career. I mean, he has a chance to be over 50 starts. So you have to take advantage of this. And the Big Ten is changing. This may be the last year of East-West divisions. You're adding USC and UCLA in 2024. Who knows how the mechanism is going to be in terms of dividing them up and, divisions or not divisions, or how you're going to determine. But you're right. It's not USC is not the USC of old, and UCLA is not exactly a power, but it's not getting any easier to get to the, to a Big Ten championship game. And so I think, to me, I still think you have three teams that are in a tier above everybody else in the West. And I think it's the rivals. I think it's Wisconsin, Iowa, and Minnesota. Not
Nebraska. I mean, they're
not Nebraska. Not Nebraska. No, that's same old Nebraska that we saw in the opener against Northwestern.
They Nebraska'd so hard in that game. The onside kick when they were up 11
made no sense. It was a terrible decision.
A couple more things on the Gophers. Then I want to get your thoughts on some bigger college football things before we go here. It does feel like you said, the expectations are certainly there. You when you were talking about Tanner Morgan, it got me thinking, is he in territory where he's going to set a record or something for most starts by a quarterback in a career? Because I can't imagine I can't imagine anybody, like, if he gets to 50, like, has a quarterback ever started 50 games?
No.
Is that even possible?
No, well,
with past rules, I mean,
I would. It's probably worth looking up. I mean, I know Adam Weber started a lot of games. It's not 50.
No.
I mean,
like I'm sure there's been 4-year starters before, so someone's probably gotten to 50.
45. Yeah, 40. Yeah, if let's say you started 4 years and 12 games, plus bowl games, you might be at 50. Yeah. But but it's still unique to have a guy with this kind of experience. And I'm just curious to see if Shiraka can tap into the 2019 Tanner Morgan. And I know he doesn't have Bateman and Johnson, and that was a big part of what they were doing. You had 2 NFL receivers there, but we saw a different Morgan that year in terms of throwing the ball, decisiveness, accuracy than what we've seen the last couple of years. And again, I think it goes back to, you have to nurture it. You can't attempt the fewest passes in Division I college football outside of the service academies, which do not pass the ball.
No.
So by all intents and purposes, you threw the fewest passes in Division I, and think that you can just flip it on and say, okay, now be an accurate passer and make this thing. It doesn't work that way. And so there's a trust factor with Shiraka and Morgan. I want to see how that works. And you need more consistency from your wide receivers, particularly. I think if Dalen Wright is consistent, I think this offense, to me, is a huge X factor, because they don't have a wide receiver with his athleticism, his physical abilities. And so if he's consistent and provides more of those, not just splash plays, but the consistency, I think this offense is completely different. So, I mean, this is to me, it's a big year for the offense, because they're going to run the ball. They got Mo back, they got Potts back.
Right.
The offensive line is going to be, it's who Fleck is. They're always going to run the ball. If they can be more balanced, I think that offense has a chance to be markedly better than it was last year.
What excites you the most about college football in general this year, just big picture, thinking even, the greater Big Ten or beyond that into, the entirety of the sport?
Yeah, it's so in flux right now.
With all the conference realignment and stuff like that.
With the conference realignment and talk about playoff expansion, and now that's on hold. I think they're waiting to see how all this shakes out, because the Big Ten is not stopping at 16.
They're going to go to 20.
They're going to go to 20, which means the SEC is going to go to 20. we'll see what happens with the ACC, Pac-12, and Big 12. Is there some kind of consolidation there? Because I think we're going to have 3, maybe 4 super conferences within 5 to 10 years by the end of this. Do they break away and have their own thing, their own playoff? So it's that's going to be fascinating. Then you're going to see the playoff expanded to at least 12 teams. I think it could get to 16, which would be really fun to have a true bracket. It won't be like basketball where a 16 seed is going to upset Alabama. That ain't going to happen. So
no,
and it's not going to solve the parity problem that exists at the top. I mean, you can have a 64 team tournament. Alabama, Georgia, Clemson, Ohio State are still going to be one of those 4 teams is going to win it. The only way you could solve that problem is, I don't think would ever happen, but that's to lower the 85 scholarship limit and spread the wealth, so to speak. Right. Coaches would never sign off on that.
Right.
I mean, they just, even the coaches that it would help would not sign off. Because under that theory, I think it would probably help the Gophers, right? Because if you lowered the scholarship limit from 85 to whatever, well, those kids that would have gone to Ohio State or Notre Dame or Alabama, they've got to go somewhere else. So they're going to go to the mid-tier programs. But try telling PJ Fleck you're going to lower the scholarship limit from 85 to not going to go for it. So you're still going to have the parity problem, but I think it would open up if you create more access to the playoffs. You're going to have more college football markets that are excited because they're going to have a potential to get into it.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you were the Gophers and you could say we got into the playoff, even if you lost right away, like that's different than going to a bowl game. It just is.
Oh, of course. Yeah. I mean, 100% is different. And so I think I was worried that an expanded playoff would take away from the one thing I think that, well, not the one thing, but a thing that I think makes college football the best sport is just that the weekly drama and tension of the college football season. And every, one loss could really knock you out of the playoff and all that. But if anything, I think it's the opposite now. I think if you expand the playoff, it will create that drama because, hey, this matchup could be, you're adding more teams to it. You're creating more drama in more matchups. Yeah. To see in more markets. So I just think it'll be great for the sport. But the sport's definitely changing. Tradition, geography, if you're married to that, you're probably going to be disappointed because the sport's not going to look like what we grew up with. But I'm fine with that. I think things evolve. I love tradition. Now I will say this. If however this Big Ten looks and however the scheduling works, they can't be dumb enough to not let the Gophers play Iowa and Wisconsin every year. Those kind of rivalries have to maintain. Like you can't get rid of that. But if you're going to tell me, hey, the Gophers are going to swap, and go play USC instead of playing Northwestern this year, I'm fine with that.
Right.
I'm totally fine with that. But you have to protect those rivalries. You have to. That would be a sin. You cannot say, okay, they'll play Wisconsin or Iowa every other year, every third. That's not going to work.
Big year for the Gophers. Big year for a sport in transition. Chip Scoggins, great stuff as always. We'll see how this starts to unfold Thursday night at Huntington Bank Stadium. Appreciate it. We'll catch you soon.
All right, brother. We'll see you, man.
Always good catching up with Chip Scoggins on college football. Nobody loves college football at our newspaper more than Chip. I think someone else could arm wrestle him maybe for that designation, but Chip is on top of college football in a way that frankly I'm not, that a lot of us aren't. He just he pays attention to it. He loves it. It is in his blood. And so love to have him on right on the eve of the Gophers season starting. They play tonight against New Mexico State. Obviously we've talked through the Jerry Kill storyline, his return here with not a very good team. But like Chip and I talked about, this is a big year for Jerry Kill. This is a big year for PJ Fleck. Big year for Jerry Kill too, but talking about the Gophers, big year for PJ Fleck. Just, from the standpoint of keeping momentum going, right? They had the big year in 2019, kind of the breakthrough year. 2020 was a mess with COVID. They went 3-4. They only played 7 games. Last year was a good rebound, but it also left you maybe like wanting a little bit more, wanting more of those signature wins. I want more of those signature wins this season. I want this program to get to the point where, 7 or 8 wins is the baseline, right? Where a disappointing season is 7 or 8 wins, and a good season is you are in true contention for, a Big Ten division title. You're in true contention for a very good bowl game or whatever comes down the pike. However things get organized as time goes on. That's what I want this program to be. That's what Wisconsin is, right? That's what Iowa typically is. That's how I want them to trend. And it just, I don't know if they're there yet. And this is one of those years that feels like will tell us if they are going to get there or if they are not going to get there. Speaking of football, Vikings made another trade. Like I said at the jump, 4 trades for Kwesi Adofo-Mensah in the last week or so. Just really reshaping this roster and, kind of the scorched earth. Rick Spielman messed up the 2021 draft tour continues because they cut Ihmir Smith-Marsette and added Jalen Reagor in a trade with the Philadelphia Eagles. Jalen Reagor, by the way, the 21st pick in the 2020 draft, one spot both before Justin Jefferson, both of them wide receivers. Reagor more of a shifty, could work out of the slot kind of guy. Also a punt returner, kick returner. That is an area that they need a lot of help because Smith-Marsette, they tried to give him that job in camp this year, and it just did not work. He was mishandling the ball too much. Just all the talent in the world, but not enough of the production that you would like to see. As a 5th-round pick in 2021, again, part of that draft where they've made a ton of moves already, moving on from guys. We'll see how much they need Reagor. We'll see how much they end up using him. But, this wasn't just a minor trade. They gave up a 7th-round pick and a conditional 4th-round pick. When you talk about 4th-round picks, those have some value. We're not just talking about end-of-draft kind of picks. So, obviously, Philadelphia cutting loose somebody who, wasn't working out for them. The Vikings adding somebody who maybe still has some upside, can fill a role here. But, bigger picture, this is what happens when you don't draft well. This is what happens when a 5th-round pick of your own doesn't work out the way you want him to, like Smith-Marsette. And on the flip side for Philadelphia, this is what happens when you miss on a 1st-round pick. You can't recoup full value. If they had taken Justin Jefferson instead of Jalen Reagor, can you imagine the trajectory difference of these two franchises? Can you imagine the Vikings right now without Justin Jefferson? There would be so much less optimism about where this team could possibly go. And there's already a lot of optimism with the Eagles. So imagine that. So, you're not going to win every draft. You're not going to win every draft pick. But thinking about how that played out for both teams, thinking about the Vikings right now having to make several moves to shore up some things, to shore up some depth problems that they just, that were honestly just created by the previous regime. And they're trying to fix things a little bit at a time. And this is going to be a process. I still don't love their depth right now at a lot of different spots, especially tight end, especially defensive back. I worry that they're still a very top-heavy roster, and they haven't been able to address fully yet the bottom part of the roster, and that could be a multi-year process as they try to dig out from, a not all bad Rick Spielman era, but an era that left them with a very top-heavy roster. So we'll see what these trades end up meaning to the team, but you can tell by the urgency of these deals and the need to make these deals that Kwesi Adofo-Mensah not satisfied with the roster in a lot of different areas. Let's finish with the cooler. Like I mentioned, Minnesota United was on a pretty good run, had won, I believe, 8 times in 11 matches, had a couple draws in there as well, so it only lost once in their last 11. That comes to an end in Real Salt Lake, 3-0 loss in that match. Again, one of those matches where you can kind of maybe see it coming based on the lineup they had put out there. They just didn't have a whole lot of firepower. So Emmanuel Reynoso stayed home to rest. Didn't send him to that midweek match. They had already lost Bakary Dibassy earlier to season-ending injury. A lot of different things at play in this game, but you'd still like to see them, even with a different lineup, starting with a 4-3-3 instead of the 4-2-3-1, even with different players playing different roles. You'd like to see better than 3-0 results-wise. Again, maybe that's one that you can just afford to punt on, so to speak. We'll see at the end of the year, but you'd like to see a better result from this game, even with different players. that will do it for me today. Going to be some Gopher volleyball talk on tomorrow's show. That team off to a good start. They lost to Texas on Wednesday, but Texas is a great team. Gophers a great team too. That was a four-set match. Gophers came back, won the third, lost a close one in the fourth. They'd had two impressive wins before that, and they start home play soon. So I'll talk to Jeff Day, and we'll include some audio from some of the players on that team as well, in a little bit more of a feature-style look at that team. So that coming up on Friday's show. Sure, we'll talk plenty Gopher football, too, coming off their opener. Twins, plenty of other stuff to get to, so there'll be no shortage of stuff to talk about. Thank you again for joining me here on Daily Delivery. I'm Michael Rand. We will see you again on Friday.